Face to face, hand to hand, film to film.
Welcome to another episode of Film to Film. My name is Iñaki Liñero. I am here with my good friend James Shergan. How are you doing, Mr. Shergan?
I am well, you son of a bitch.
You're a damn ugly motherfucker.
Dylan.
Well, as you can see, I did not try to do the voice or the accent. I'm not good at that. I already have an accent. But James, give it another shot. Let's see how you do it.
It's not very good. Iñaki, how are you doing, you son of a bitch?
You've gotten weak.
Dylan.
So yeah, we decided this week to watch a classic, a schlocky classic.
Yeah, something from your birth year.
Something from my birth year. You're correct. This movie is slightly older than I am.
Yeah, from your continent too? Question mark. I guess it might be Central America, so maybe not.
I think it was filmed in. Actually, I was looking at the credits, and there was a lot of thanks to the government of Puerto Vallarta and Mexico. So I'm gonna say it was filmed in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, I'm sure it was filmed there, but where is it supposed to be set? Is the question.
Oh, that's. I mean, it's supposed to be set in south of the border, Banana Republic, where guerrillas are and communists.
So unclear. It could have been in many places, I guess, at this time.
I mean,
the peak era of CIA up to shady shit in Central and South America.
Yeah, I mean, but by the way, folks who are listening to this, we're talking about The Predator, the 1987 film, Predator. Actually, no, it's not even called The Predator. This is just called Predator. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in for people who are listening. So yeah, we can now continue. So where was this filmed? I think it's supposed to be set in bumblefuck, Hispanic south of the border, Banana Republic country, where you got guerrillas. I don't think it's ever really said where it is, but I mean, this is an era where the U.S. was funding the Contras in Nicaragua. That was in Central America. The CIA was funding paramilitaries in Colombia to fight the guerrilla, the FARC, both of them being narcos. So both two extremist groups, CIA funding one of them, allegedly Russia funding the other. So it could have been Colombia. I mean, those are the places. It could have been Colombia, it could have been Nicaragua. Long story short, it could have been basically anywhere where the U.S. and Russia were playing chess.
Which was many places at this point.
Exactly. Many places except for, I would say, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, because the U.S. had already taken care of those places in the 70s.
Yeah, wonderful time. Just definitely peak CIA right here.
Well, also those places were easier because they did not have jungles of that kind.
That's true too. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's your classic 1980s film in the sense that it's middle of Cold War, so it's like, all right, Banana Republics and guerrillas. Go. You already have your plot written. You have your background set.
Yeah. Put some aliens in there, and it's such a simple premise, but it works really well. I mean, we'll get into it,
Yeah,
but yeah.
exactly. All right, well, so first of all, I mean, yeah, this was my pick, but when I hear what are your thoughts? How many times have you seen this film? And you know,
Yeah, I've seen.
how you feel about it?
I am quite fond of this film. I like it quite a bit. I think I've liked this film a little bit more each time I've seen it. And for me, at least, it kind of harkens back to like this older Hollywood time, to these types of films that I really like, where it's just like a very simple premise with like a lot of big screen presences and movie stars. And a great sense of setting, and they just have this thing, and they just execute it, and they just do a really good job. It's a bit different from, I don't know, to compare it to something more contemporary like The Gray Man, where they're bouncing from location to location. This one has one set, basically, set in the jungle, and that's where all 107 minutes take place, and I think it's all the better for that.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually only seen this film twice. This was my second time. The first time I saw it, I was a kid. I probably watched it on some TV showing that my older sister was watching. And
do you like it? Do you have fond memories of that one time?
When I was a kid, I hated horror movies. I was probably forced to watch it by my sister. So probably, I remember very little of it. So there was a marathon, so I remember watching that and the second one.
Oh, the LA one.
Hmm?
The LA one.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I liked the first one more, mainly because it had Arnold, and I really liked Arnold as a little kid. So, no objective reasons of why I'm preferring one over the other. With all that said, I mean, I watched it again, and I'm not gonna say I loved it as much as maybe you do. I consider it the epitome of action when it comes to grabbing all the 80s action cliches that you could have. You grab them, you put them in one movie. And it really feels like, watching almost like a reel of, a YouTube reel of explosions from movies, but all in one. And in that sense, it's a great movie. But if you think about it objectively, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, for me too. I don't know how much we'll disagree on this one, but for me, it's more great fun. Extremely 80s. This doesn't feel like a 90s film. It's just so macho. Everyone's so sweaty. It feels like everyone like is lifting insane amounts of weight. Everyone's like like clearly like either the climate is making everyone sweat, or they're just getting doused in like baby oil or body butter or something like that. So everyone just is like glowing basically, or glistening. So just like extremely 1980s. And for me, I don't know if it ever quite lives up to, like, for instance, 1979 Alien. I think I like that film a little bit more than this one. But it's a film that is highly enjoyable, and in my view, at least, fairly rewatchable too.
Yeah, that's the part where it's kind of interesting how I thought I was going to enjoy it more, perhaps. So because I thought the suspense was gonna be similar to Alien. So when we think about like this kind of films, Alien is the kind of film where you have an extraterrestrial being, plucking characters like one by one, but Alien just was very suspenseful. Well, this one is not so much. The positive on this one is that you got lots of glistening muscles, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, this one's definitely like schlockier, as you put it.
Yeah, if you enjoy, if you enjoy bodybuilders, running around in in the jungle and getting killed one by one, I think this one definitely has a plus there. I mean, again, I think there was a scene where I turned off my brain and I was like, oh, what great fun. What joyful moment am I having? And it was just one of those movies where the plot would get on the way of this joyful moment. So perhaps less plot and more joyful moments would make it better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me at least, I think this is probably the better hangout movie than Alien. Like, if you and I were to get together and we could just put this movie on and, maybe, like, pay attention to 80% of it and, like, kind of chat through some of it. Whereas Alien, if that's on, I'm, like, locked in to that film.
Yeah.
And I'm just paying
I
super
agree.
close
I think
attention.
this is... I agree. I think this is a movie where you're gonna watch it with friends. You're gonna be drinking some brewskis, like being with your bros, perhaps doing some curls while you're watching it too.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with you. This is a hangout movie. This is a movie you have at a party. Because you're gonna have it at the background, and then all of a sudden you're gonna see the scene where they attack the compound, and then everyone will just lock in for that scene because of how outrageous it is, and and then everyone will hang out again until you start seeing the carnage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, similar to Alien, these films both have that sci-fi slasher bit. I do feel like you make a good point that Alien does a really good job of sustaining suspense. Predator, I mean, I think there are definitely some suspenseful moments, but I think if you were to compare them as suspenseful films, it's not quite what Alien is. So in that sense, you can like kind of tune out at certain points and come back in when some of the great set pieces come back, like the attack on the compound or some of the alien or the Predator attacking them.
Yeah, and of course the final fight.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, one thing about this movie that I do enjoy is it has good cinematography. It has, some beautiful shots, especially around the end. With the exception of the main actor, the main characters, that there is some intrigue on different characters. Many of them are pretty detestable, but but I mean that's part of the fun. You get to see them die, right?
Right. I mean, classic slasher trope. It's like it's more fun to watch people die when they're they're not good people, and I mean these people are shady commando CIA types. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I think the part about this movie that is interesting is this film, just to throw in the details, right? This film was directed by John McTiernan, Tiernan, who has directed great action films. I mean, you got Die Hard,
Hunt for Red October.
This one is perhaps not a great action film, but one that is dear to my heart. The Last Action Hero. Another Arnold.
I think that one's pretty good. That one's like I'm like slightly allergic to meta-ness sometimes, and that one just is a touch too meta for me, but I do like it. He also did Die Hard with Vengeance. So he had like this stretch of pretty good action films, starting with this one. I think this one, while I don't think it's quite on the level of his very best work, I think it's like just a notch below.
For sure. But that's the interesting thing. This one. So what's curious about this one, because the most obvious comparison I'm gonna do is with Alien. Because I think this is the two movies where you have an extraterrestrial being like plucking folks.
Right, and it doesn't help that they made Alien versus Predators movies twice. So I mean, neither of which I've seen, but it puts them kind of in the same set as. Okay, I heard it was just okay.
Yeah, it's. It's schlocky as hell. The problem was that it was PG-13, so it's like.
Oh, what? Okay.
You cannot. Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense. But I mean, going back to this movie, I think the director does a great job with action. I am curious, and I think this movie sort of demonstrates that he does not have a great does a great job with horror. Um, I think uh, Predator as a horror villain is an amazing horror villain. The guy can be invisible. The I mean the monster can do all kinds of things. It's very highly intelligent, and the actual costume design is beautiful. I mean,
Yes.
all of those things. So what? So I think, and I go back to sort of my complaint perhaps with this movie is for all of that, there's not much suspense. There's not much like actual scares. It's really an action movie. Perhaps part has to do with the music that is very action movie orchestra like basically an orchestra of like boom 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 boom.
Yeah. It might as well be the soundtrack for Die Hard or something like that.
Exactly. So
Other than like some mambo drums or something like that. That's like the kind of the jungle element, but not that that adds much horror element to it. But
exactly, yeah, correct. So it's sort of interesting, and I again this is so the only Predator movies I've seen is this one, the one in L.A., which I do not remember very well because I was a kid, and Alien versus Predator. And perhaps because of all of that, I generally presume that I remembered that Predator was more of a horror movie, and then when watching it, I was like, oh no, this is an action flick. Like this is, I mean, it has the horror element, but the direction of an action film.
yeah, what you're saying actually reminds me a lot of what happened to me when I originally watched Aliens, the sequel to Alien. And for me, at least, I had just watched Alien, and I thought it was fantastic. And so Aliens, I was kind of going in expecting more of like just a horror movie, and it was more horror action. And it really kind of rubbed me the wrong way enough that I still haven't revisited the film, even though it has a really strong reputation. So I do need to revisit that and just kind of the expectations there. I think for me, at least, I'm curious to hear some of the reasons that you have. But for me, at least, not going to say this is like a great horror film, but it does work decently well for me. I think there are some legitimately tense moments. Not that it's like filled with tension like Alien is, but for me at least, I think it could be better. But I do find like the creature effects and the gore effects and stuff like that to work quite well and move it into that horror category. Like some of the kills on people, they're very, very quite bloody. How we see those corpses kind of hanging from the sky. There are parts of it that almost remind me just, not a lot, but maybe like 12% of the DNA of something like Cannibal Holocaust, where they're going through the jungle and they're finding like these dead humans, and they're just like horrifically treated. Like one of the shots where it just slowly rises up, and then you finally see like the bodies just hanging way up there in the trees. So I feel like I'm not going to make the case that it's great at the horror, but I do think it has a few moments at least that I do want to give the film some credit for, as far as like having some tension and stuff like that. But I do think you are right that if you were to just kind of break down the DNA of this, it's probably like 65% action, 35% horror, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I believe that, to be honest, I believe this was written as a horror movie and directed as an action flick.
Yeah, and if you look at what McTiernan has done after that, I mean, like it's like pretty unhorror like in terms of Die Hard and Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero. Those are pretty much straight action films or action
Right,
thrillers.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, The Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's jump in a little bit into the scene that you're talking about. I think that's probably one of the best horror moments. And that's probably one of the best scenes, right? I mean, to set up the tension. It's when they find a crashed helicopter, and I believe it was Billy Duke. No, sorry, no, Billy Duke. It was Billy Soul, who was played by Sonny Lanham.
The tracker.
The tracker, yeah. Billy Soul is the one who goes up the trees and finds the bodies just there, skinned and hanging, and you got a little bit of music there, and I mean that's probably one of the most one of the scenes with most tension for sure, especially because there you're having finding them, then you have the other character, Mac Elliott, played by Bill Duke, and Mac Elliott is like, oh man, that's not a way that a soldier should die, and sort of at that moment you sort of have like, especially if you know what the movie is about, that, oh man, this monster means business, as opposed to what the characters there believe, which is the gorilla.
Right. I mean, a lot of this film is kind of like the mystery element, and that's what makes it so interesting to come back to, because now at this point everyone knows what Predator is, basically, and so it's like the mystery element is kind of gone, especially as I'm rewatching this for the third time, you're rewatching it a second time, so that element is kind of interesting to explore, because like a lot of this film, probably like half of the film, maybe even more, they're just like trying to figure out what they're even up against. So like, is it human? It could be like the gorillas, but something about this seems like inhuman, and like the only witness is saying like the jungle took them.
Oh yeah, much later.
Yeah. So like a lot of it is just kind of that. So that's one thing I did forget about this film. Is like a lot of it is just them kind of being like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think if one didn't know anything about this movie, probably the enjoyability was higher because there is a mystery. Well, yeah, we both know, oh, it's Predator,
Yeah. I mean, these films are always different to watch a second time or a third time, and sometimes they're good, and I do think this holds up reasonably well. But stuff like the mystery, obviously, is not going to play the same way when you rewatch this film.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that scene was tense. There are other scenes that have been that. I mean, although that scene was tense, then you go into sort of the more actiony area, which is where they find the compound of the gorillas, with some Soviet soldiers, basically killing some of the people who they're supposed to rescue. And that area is where, again, I'm like, okay, there's tension, but it's not the horror because we're all expecting the Predator. This is a tension of, oh shit, how are they gonna fight the gorillas?
That's straight action tension right there. I mean, that scene might as well be out of Rambo. I mean, it's some pretty enjoyable action. I mean, especially with how over the top and explosive it gets, and it also does really establish the kind of like how good these people are at their jobs. But
are they good? I'm sorry. Are they good? So well, their mission. I mean, I'm going to jump into a plot here, and this is perhaps the Nate Nathaniel moments, but. The movie establishes that you got basically our main character is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is Dutch, but we're gonna call him Arnold because it's Arnold. And then our second most important character at the moment is Al Dillon, the former partner of Arnold, and now CIA agent that is played by Carl Weathers, who by then I think was very famous for his Rocky appearances.
Yeah.
Apollo Creed.
Right.
Those are the two main characters. I mean, we get their handshake / air arm wrestle, memeable moment, which it's still great to watch now. Like, I mean, everyone has seen the memes, but you watch it and you're like, yeah. I just got some testosterone, flowing in my blood, just by watching it. You know, but you set that up, and then you realize, oh, okay, Carl Weathers decided to join the CIA. Arnold didn't. Arnold works with like a commando rescue team that specializes in rescue only. That's why he did not go to Libya. And then while Weathers is in the CIA doing some nonsense CIA stuff that is reproachable in some ways, and the whole thing is Arnold's commando team's main purpose is to rescue folks. Well, and their mission is to rescue folks, which is why he joined the mission. And then when they encounter this compound after seeing one of the people he is supposed to rescue being executed, they go in, and instead of being secretive, instead of being discreet to do a proper rescue, Arnold lifts up a car full of explosives with his bare muscles, of course, and rams that car to the center where there are more explosives, and we have probably the most joyful and colorful and explosive filled scene that one would see even out of Rambo, where the death count is probably too many to count, because they're shooting. I mean, Arnold himself is shooting with a machine gun, later with a bazooka that who knows where he got it from. Then it goes back to a machine gun, and of course you got Bane, played by Jesse Ventura. Blaine, played by Jesse Ventura, with a minigun, and a minigun can destroy like a whole village. And you got everyone else everyone's just shooting their guns and destroying this compound. And I mean, they destroy the shit out of it. And again, enjoyability, I'll give it a 100 out of a 10.
I ain't got time to bleed.
Exactly. However, there's a moment where they find Anna, the insurgent, and then Arnold just there, and then goes, "Oh, yes. The hostages. Where are the hostages? Buddy, you killed everyone. Everyone died. Like, literally, there's no one. Everyone was mowed down. If there were hostages, they were mowed down. The only survivor is this woman, who is the enemy."
Yeah, not a hostage. Fair point. Good point. Bad at rescuing hostages. Good kill to death ratio, for sure. I mean, they just good at the war making efforts. But you do make some interesting points there. I mean, especially with just the total overkill that they have in terms of like their miniguns and the machine guns and stuff like that. And I think it's interesting the way, just to tie this into another scene, that they have the scene and they're super effective at killing people. You will grant me that, at least, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But there's another scene later on in the film where they just totally unload their guns and stuff like that. That is kind of similar to this scene, except the outcome is just totally different, where they hit almost nothing. They just kind of nick the predator, and they have a little bit of Mountain Dew blood come out of it. So I think it's interesting kind of to tie those two scenes together. One where they just completely mow down these guerrillas and these Soviets over there, and the second one, just to kind of show you what they're up against, is they barely do anything against the predator.
Oh, I agree, and I think that it's a pretty good segue to. Yeah, we're not going to talk scene by scene. I think this is a more interesting movie to talk about, like what perhaps it's trying to look into, and read more into it than we should give them credit, and that's what I'm going to do. I think that scene sort of them. One could argue makes this movie less shallow that I believe it is. I don't know if it's on purpose or not on purpose.
It's very unclear. It's
It
hard to tell how much is intentional or unintentional. I've seen some people go as far as like reading this as more satirical in terms of making fun of macho stuff, and I just don't know that they were trying to make that statement. So
well,
I'm willing to
let's
go.
discuss this. Let's
Okay,
discuss
sure,
that.
sure.
All right, let's discuss it. So, so, so yeah, we just talked about how effective all of these men were with their big guns. Like destroying this compound, just mowing down, killing everyone, basically being useless at saving people. And all of this was thanks to their, not so much their use of muscles, but guns, right?
Yes.
And then we have that next scene where they're all shooting the shit out of nothing. That's what happened. And, basically burned down a solid half a mile of jungle with all their guns, miniguns, and firepower. And I'm not. One could say that maybe there is a satire, perhaps not on the macho level, because at the end of the day, Arnold actually wins by being the most macho man that he could be. So perhaps not a satire on the macho man, but a satire of the the American uh, firepower, the American way of fighting. Because I mean, they're up against something that is way more technologically powerful than them, but at the same time, uh, it's it's the predator is good because of how sneaky it is. The predator is good because it has that camouflage suit that basically makes it invisible. Um, the predator uses its firepower not as often as one would think, and most of the kills that are most terrifying is actually its close combat kills. And you have that versus all of these men with a shit ton of firepower that could mow down the whole area and probably could have killed the predator, but for the predator escaping really quickly,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And that did not help. All the bombs and explosives that were placed did not help. Basically, all this technology, this war technology, doesn't help. Even though it's great for killing brown people in the jungle, it's not effective at all at killing, this one being that is just, at the end of the day, is smarter than all of this men combined. Um, and in that sense, it is sort of a satire, perhaps, of even American films, like of the idea of this firepower that America had then.
And especially in like the 80s, we think of it as like a decade of excess and stuff like that too. And like especially macho times, Reagan era, stuff like that. I think it feeds into a lot of what you're saying. Sorry to interject. Please.
Yeah, no, I agree exactly. And I mean, this is, one has to remember, this is before. This is before the 2000s, where, like, I mean, by now, I mean, it's after Vietnam, so Vietnam is kind of a lesson where the U.S. went full guns blazing and still lost. But after Vietnam, like, the U.S. started believing its shit again, and in the days we live today, like, I mean, after 20 years in Afghanistan, U.S. lost with all its firepower, with the most advanced drones in the fucking world. It lost, and it lost miserably. And by lost, I mean, and it's, by the way, it's not. I'm not gonna make it political. It's not Biden's fault. It's no one's fault. It's just they couldn't do it. They couldn't hack it.
Right, right.
And
if it was just amount of firepower, then it would have been done 20 years ago.
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, the U.S. has spent 10 times more than the next, like, or is it spends more than the next 10 countries combined in power.
Yeah.
And listen, and I think the writers, Jim Thomas and John Thomas, maybe were, touching on that thing. Like, maybe they're like, yeah, we're the most powerful, and they give you that scene to show you how fucking powerful we are, to then show you, and that's pretty powerless.
You make a very convincing thesis. Yeah, I approve your Slate 2,000 word long form article that you can write. Yeah, no, I that's a good case. Yeah, it's hard to say how intentional it is, but the film does work in that way if you read it such. So,
I mean, we're giving it a shit ton of credit that maybe
absolutely.
is completely unwarranted.
Yeah. For a film that stars a bunch of bodybuilders that are just massive human beings. Yeah.
That's something I always find interesting about the 80s is how military soldiers had to be bodybuilders. Like, I mean, all right, we know Arnold Schwarzenegger back then was Mr. Universe. But Carl Weathers, like, the dude was buff for Rocky, but for this movie, he like gained like a solid 50 more pounds of just pure muscles. And you had then Jesse Ventura, who
pro wrestler,
so roids were high on his.
No, these were 100% natural. No one on the set at all took steroids for sure.
Arnold could have. Because Arnold
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm pretty sure a lot of people on the set took steroids.
No, sorry. I meant Arnold could have been. I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say is the opposite. Arnold might have been all natural, like just workout and no roids. Because for bodybuilders, I think roids are actually banned.
Sure, we'll say that.
So Arnold could have.
Okay.
Weathers, not so much.
Regardless, we're not going to make them do a drug test for a 35-year-old movie. But these are big, massive men.
Yeah, and it's always funny because then you see pictures of the actual military, and I mean, they're strong people. Military soldiers are very strong people.
But they're like fairly. I mean, they're probably above average size, but they're not like that much above average size.
No, and if anything, I think being the size of Jesse Ventura probably slows you down like no other.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think stealth is probably number one thing on a military soldier, especially a commando.
Yeah, that's true. Rescuing. I mean, there's nothing subtle or stealthy about any of these guys really. Another fun fact about the cast is, like, we're talking about Jesse Ventura and Arnold, two future governors. What were the odds of that at this time?
Carl Weathers needs to run for office somewhere.
Yeah. It's not too late.
Yeah.
And, the other thing to do with their size, too, is, they originally cast Van Damme as the Predator. And they ended up replacing him, and I think they made the right choice because they put like a person that's even more massive, the 7'2" Kevin Peter Hall, into like that big suit, and it works really well because we know that Arnold and Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura are big guys, but there's something even bigger with the Predator. So I think that was a really smart choice.
Yeah, I agree. Although had the Predator been smaller, it still would have been interesting.
It still could have worked. I mean, maybe we would have seen the Predator do the Jean-Claude Van Damme splits, which would have been highly entertaining. I would definitely watch that movie, but I have a feeling that it's better off with kind of that really big physical presence that we see.
True. All right. So yeah, I had that spiel in my head a little bit. I didn't know if I was going to get to it.
There you go.
But there you go. Yeah, let's go into the. I mean, what is that you love the most about this movie? Let's just go into that.
I don't know. I like I think one of the things that I've come around with more and more is I do like a lot of like uh, the gore effects to it. I don't know if that would be my number one thing, but like the creature design of this is magnificent. With
Hmm.
Stan Winston, who did a lot of films, Jurassic Park, I think, a bunch of other stuff. I think that stuff looks really good. Supposedly they brought him in kind of last minute to help design
Hmm.
it, but you wouldn't know it because the creature I think looks really amazing, and we get the other great classic line. It's like you're one ugly motherfucker from Arnold.
Hmm.
So like at the end when Arnold has to face off with it, I think I'm a big fan of how that looks. That's probably maybe the most effective horror element. Uh, I don't know. I feel like I like the horror, like the kind of like the quasi sci-fi slasher-ish of it.
Hmm.
For me, slashers are rarely like 10 out of 10s, but they're fun. And for me, this film is similar. It's not a 10 out of 10, but it is a fun film, a very fun film, and one that I could definitely watch probably every couple of years easily and have a good time watching it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the biggest highlight for me is the inventiveness of the monster and how it kills, but also like the special effects behind it, right? I mean, its invisible suit is. I'm not sure. I mean, how they did it, whether it was animation or I don't think it was. I mean, it's definitely a visual effect, but I don't know if it was. I think it was too early for CG, so it must have
I think
been
so, yeah.
animation or some sort of composite, and it's just fun to see. It's also it's also. I mean, if you're talking about a slasher, I mean, this movie has elements of a slasher that are very solid.
For sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
get the
just
first eye view of the killer, just like in a good slasher, except for the killer sees like shit, but at least you get the first eye view of it.
yeah.
Uh,
Great sound design of it too. That's another thing I wanted to
yeah,
mention. Love the sound design, and it's very simple what they do for the Predator review, but I do think it holds up really well, especially for something that's like as old as it is.
oh yeah, no, I mean for sure. The way the way the Predator looks is definitely simple. I mean,
I
and
meant the Predator point of view, to be clear.
right, yeah. The way it the color the weird color scheme to sort of being like I mean for the longest time I thought it was what's it called, like a heat detecting sort of eyesight, but then Arnold was able to hide with that magical mud, so I guess it was not heat, it just had a really terrible eyesight.
Yeah, it needed LASIK.
Exactly. um I mean, this is in some areas though. I do think. Yeah, I mean, another element perhaps that this movie does well is like within its manliness, it's the that it still sort of tries to play onto the sentimentality of different characters. You have again Mac Elliott, Sergeant Mac Elliott, played by Bill Duke, who, after grieving for the death of his best friend, Blaine Cooper, which for some reason you would not have guessed they were friends until, he died, uh, goes fucking crazy. Now, I think that character was probably one of the characters with most depth in the film because he goes crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
because earlier in the film we see him as very sane. In fact, he's like tells Carl Weathers to like get with the program, basically.
exactly. Um, and then all of a sudden he's pretty reckless and everything. What are your thoughts about him and his lovely death?
Bill Dukes. Uh, I mean, he just gets his face just totally blasted. I mean, it's great. I like it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bill Duke too,
Mm-hmm.
who is like one of those. he's got one of those faces. It's like one of those faces that you don't forget. He's like a super strong screen presence, and I mean the casting of this film is really fascinating because it seems like they are just like to just toss more interesting people and more faces into the mix for these kind of just slasher parts where they're gonna die sometime before Arnold. So yeah, no, I like Mac a lot. I like Bill Duke. I think he's probably maybe my favorite of the secondary cast, just because he's got such a good look. Underrated director too. Bill Duke did some really good films around this era as well. So, so yeah, I dig it.
Yeah, actually, for me, my favorite probably was Billy Soul by Sonny Lanham.
Another strong presence for sure.
Another exactly very strong presence. He is. I mean, one thing that's fun about this movie is that it was doing the inclusion, the over inclusion shit that the '90s did before the '90s.
We even have someone named Pancho Ramirez.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you had Arnold.
Yeah.
He's your white character, and Jesse Ventura. So Arnold is your European white character. Jesse Ventura is your regular white character. And Shane Black as Rick Hawkins as your regular white character that needs to wear glasses. It's very important. We need to include the glass wearing folks. Then you had Carl Weathers and Bill Dukes as your black characters. And then you had Richard Chavez as George Pancho Ramirez. So he's your Latino. The whitest Latino they found, interestingly enough, but you're Latino nonetheless. And you had Sonny Lanham playing, Billy Soul, and he's your Native American. Very in touch with, the earth. He's the one who right away understood the dangers.
Right.
Probably, I mean, his best quote is when Carl Weathers asked him, like, when they're trying to figure the stuff out, and Carl Weathers is like, "Do you really believe all this stuff?" And then he's like, "We're all gonna die." So I mean, good moments.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that, like, this is your Village People crew.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it doesn't feel very forced in the way that sometimes it can, for sure. Another cool thing, especially with the new movie Prey coming out on Hulu, the new Predator sequel, which I've seen, and I think it's pretty good. It's not as good as this film, but it is enjoyable. Is that focuses on the Native Americans in like the past facing one of these creatures too. So I think it's kind of fun to have the Sonny Landham character sort of representing that, and then now we have a whole film where it's like Native Americans are the central characters in it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this is one area where perhaps I would have given the movie a better rating if we're talking about rating later, or once we talk about rating later. Billy Soul, Sonny Landham's character, he dies off screen. And I think that was a very upsetting thing because it's set up as he's gonna have a fucking fight. He drops all his weapons. He just has his machete or whatever big knife that is. He cuts his chest, which obviously is glistening, as you were mentioning before, because everyone else is,
Yeah, well-oiled chest, yeah.
And you're like, oh man, he's gonna fight, and and he's already been like observing. He's the most observant of all the characters and everything. And then off screen, you just hear him screaming as Arnold is attempting to save Ana Gonzalez, played by Elpidia Carrillo. And I think that's an area where I was wondering, like, what happened? Like,
true, yeah, because every other death happens on screen, and there are some truly memorable ones. We haven't even talked about the Carl Weathers death, where his arm gets chopped off but somehow continues to fire the machine gun, and he keeps firing with the left arm, which I think is actually my personal favorite of the deaths.
Yeah, no.
I mean, another thing that I love about this film is just how iconic some of the moments are. But you're right. Missed opportunity there. Should have had Sonny Landham's fight to the death. Because, I mean, it was a noble sacrifice on his part. He knew he was not going to survive. So it would have been nice to give a little glory to him there.
Exactly. I mean, maybe even have like a little fight before he gets like, torn to pieces. Because one thing about the movie that it does, I think, I mean, we got to remember, why are we talking about this movie? And we're talking about it. I mean, I picked it actually because there is Prey, that, it's on Hulu or Disney Plus if you're listening outside the U.S.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it on Wikipedia. Although by the time you're listening to it, perhaps it's neither. But whatever.
Okay.
But I mean, we're talking about it because, I mean, this movie started a full franchise. But when this movie came out, it was not that beloved. And I mean, some critics would call it like highly derivative of everything that had happened already. So I mean, why are we talking about it now? Why is there a new Predator out of the like tons of Predators that have come out? When we're talking about other films like Halloween. Well, shit. I mean, the first Halloween was groundbreaking in so many levels, and yeah, that makes sense. You have, I mean, Friday the 13th, perhaps less so, but still, it went on to have tons of sequels, even though there were other movies that, were big, other slashers that were big back then, but died. But Predator is one of the few films that, just like all of them, came out, was not in the top of the pack. It's no Alien, right?
It was a hit, but not to the level of Alien, no.
Right. And yet, we talk about it now, and the monster's still, relevant in, American pop culture. And I think this has to do with the monster himself. And that's one of the novel things. This monster fights, well, it still fights dirty, but it's one of the few monsters that will try to match where you're at.
Well, it's a great concept, just the whole thing, and I feel like it just approaches it from a totally different angle. I mean, we've talked about kind of around this the whole time, but like just this whole film has such a strong concept to the whole thing that I feel like that carries the film a long way. I mean, like, and they can just carry that concept to like 1600s Native American time, and it still works because it's just such a cool concept to take kind of that creature and move it around. And I love how it's like a hunter basically, and it's just a novel way to approach it. It's like the way it attacks people and stuff like that. It's not necessarily about world domination or anything like that. It's like literally hunting people. It seems it's intelligent, sort of like humans are, and like the way it kills people, it's very similar to how like a hunter would hunt a deer. It tries to kill it with one shot sometimes, and then it kind of runs off. And so I love how simple but well designed kind of the concept of the creature and the creature is.
Right, and it's it's a sports hunter. It's not even by necessity.
Yep.
Which clearly means that it doesn't give a shit. It's whatever makes it more difficult to it that could actually be more gratifying. So back to because of all of that, I mean, I think there is a little bit of going back to Billy. There was lost opportunity because Billy got rid of all his weapons except for his melee weapon, right? The knife, which means that Predator probably would have gotten rid of all of its weapons for that fight, except for that double knife things that it has, and that would have been a fun fight to watch.
Yeah. Would have been a good hand-to-hand chance for something a little different too.
Exactly, and it would have perhaps given away a little bit more, but of how it acted later with Arnold, right when it realizes that Arnold is weaponless, and it basically gets rid of all of its weapons, including its armor, so Arnold could actually punch its face. Um, but I mean, yeah, that's an area where I think there was an opportunity lost. Obviously, 35 years too late to call it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny that you called out. Although I do agree with you that the fact that this missed an opportunity for like a death action scene when this film is pretty filled to the brim with them. But yeah, I would have liked to see that shot for sure.
Yeah, I sorry, it's just, that was a disappointment for me. Like, that's why I'm like, I think that one affects the rating. Like, that's how disappointed I was at that, especially because they up that character so much. But yeah, no, I mean, if we go down the death, I think actually, how would you rank the deaths?
Oh, there's a lot of good ones. I love Carl Weathers' death. I mean, just the machine gun firing. It's so ridiculous and silly, but also Jesse Ventura's death is also good because he's like one of the biggest guys and like is portrayed as like one of the most macho, and he just goes down like nothing. I mean, I even like the one where, well, it's not death, but like I like the log swinging down and wiping out the guy's legs and basically just like taking him out. Yeah, there's a lot of great moments, a lot of great action in this film for sure. I mean, you could see why McTiernan would go on to become quite a strong action director in the next 5 years. Who else was there? Shane Black. How does he die? I forget how Shane Black dies.
It's just really fast. It almost seems like he gets ripped like into pieces right in front of
the hostage.
Of the hostage. Yeah, he's just like sort of. It's just lots of blood, and then there's just like his guts are left behind.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that one was fine too. I mean, I like how gory the film is. I like how nasty it gets. So I like all of them. What about you? What are your favorites?
I think I would go in that order. Carl Weathers, just because of just seeing that muscular arm falling with the muscle still flexing as it's shooting a gun, and him just screaming. Very fun.
Yeah. Nathaniel does not approve, but Italy's calling, and Dario Argento definitely approves of that death.
Jesse Ventura is a close second. I just love how he just fucking whole just ripped out of his body, and it's just so fast, and it's just like, oh, full body. Oh, now you're missing a whole part of your torso. That's just interesting. Then you have, of course, Bill Dukes. Although that one has some continuity errors.
Yeah. His head blows up and then all of a sudden it's intact, like two shots later.
Yeah. And yeah, the most disappointing, of course, is Poncho's. No, not Poncho. Sorry, Billy's. How did Poncho died?
I don't remember.
He's the one who gets hit by the log, but did he die from that?
I feel like he had to, but where, I don't know. I'll look it up if you can keep talking.
I mean, either way, like most of the deaths are pretty sweet. Of course,
it does say that it kills Pancho. It does not describe how.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I think maybe Pancho was killed as they were carrying him.
Yeah, I mean, like he's kind of helpless if he's like had his legs wiped out. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And then we got the two survivors. Here you could say technically there's a final girl.
Final boy is Arnold.
Although the truth is that our final girl is Arnold. And I think from the moment Arnold jumps off the fire, the waterfall, that's when the movie sort of becomes a different movie. So I think the movie has like three moments, and obviously you could say, well, yeah, duh, three acts.
Yeah.
But the three moments are radically different. So the first act, if you will, right? It's commandos doing commando shit and blowing up things.
Yeah.
Act two is your horror film,
The slasher.
and then Act three is
Home Alone.
Arnold versus Predator.
Yeah, Arnold playing Macaulay Culkin against the Predator.
I know. Yeah, they did Home Alone before Home Alone came out.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, and by the way, this is how Arnold defeats the Predator. Going back to my little spiel, without any of the weaponry, but with the ingenuity of gorilla.
Right. None of the firepower or anything like that. He had to just be clever and think of stuff, which is kind of how Prey is too. I mean, you should watch it, but I don't want to spoil too much. But
yeah.
I mean, like the lead is like a smaller woman, so it's like she has to use like ingenuity rather than brute force or something like that.
Well, I mean, even Arnold couldn't use brute force.
Exactly. Yeah.
Arnold, the most muscular man at the time, because I think he was like probably the most muscular man at the time. Without roids, at least. With very weirdly shaped muscles, if you think about it.
Yes. But I mean, like, and then you just get some great shots with like the Predator and Arnold together. I mean, this is when we see the most of the Predator, and I think that stuff is aged super well because like the Predator, whatever they use for the creature effects in the suit, and like the big 7'2" guy in there, it just like it makes Arnold look small, and we know how big Arnold is, so it's quite impressive.
I mean, I'm assuming it was a mix between animatronics, animation, and
a guy in a suit.
Yeah, I mean, it was a guy in a suit, but for the mask, they were probably using animatronics. I mean,
yeah. I'm sure that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, it's beautiful, and again, the monster's design is very fun. It is one ugly motherfucker.
Yeah, it's great. The monster design is right up there with Alien, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. I think, especially the animatronic suit. Yeah, is the suit in Prey still animatronics, or do you think it's?
Yeah, I think they use a little more
CG.
CG. I do think they use the CG fairly well as far as that stuff goes. Like it's a little different usage than I don't know, other films that have come out like Gray Man or something. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I figure that they probably have their science down. It's not like when watching a modern Godzilla film from Japan where it's like, give me the rubber back, give me the rubber suit back, please.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, is there anything you want to talk about the final fight, the mud, the scream while holding the torch? I mean, there's a beautiful shot of Arnold calling the monster while he's holding a torch, doing his Arnold roar.
Yeah, no, I mean it all holds up really well. It's like one of the few night scenes we get too, so it has like this great atmosphere to it, where it's like darker and obviously kind of like the color palette of the film changes at that point too, because Arnold is now covered in mud and stuff like that, because he has sort of figured out the cheat code to fight the Predator. So I mean, I think the ending of it works really well. Love all the location stuff. You mentioned the waterfall, which reminded me that like some of the shots there are just really, really beautiful. It's hard to replace just that really, really gorgeous location photography there. So yeah, I mean, I like the conclusion. I think it nails the landing perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. Does it have a happy ending?
Mm-hmm. Kind of not.
Yeah, Arnold looks like shit at the end. Like he gets
Yeah.
on the chopper. It's one of the few films where like, because I mean, one thing about this movie that if we're talking about like very 80s, this was the movie filled with your classic Arnold one-liners. I mean, if it bleeds, it can be killed. When he barges in and kills a whole group of people at the compound, he goes like knock knock, or he stabs someone through a wall, and the person and then he's like stick around. You have all those classic Arnold one-liners from the 80s films, right? And I mean, I don't know how many Arnold films you've watched from the 80s, like Running Man.
I've seen a few, but I feel like I've seen more in kind of his golden '90s era, more than '80s. So
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, still though, I mean, from Running Man on, and Running Man is I think straight up 80s. I mean, one of the things about Arnold, because yeah, we're not talking about Conan the Barbarian. That's
yeah,
I think that's too far back. But like post Conan, him just blowing shit up and things like that. He was the one line man, like the one liner man, and at the end when he would kill the bad guy, he would go and be like, oh, I don't know, like the Running Man. He's fully beat up and gets the bad guy finally, and
right.
he's just like, you're cancelled. You get all of that, and I think this is the one and only film where I see him winning as a human being, not a Terminator, and he just gets on the fucking chopper and passes out.
Yeah, I mean, you make good points. It's like this is a film where he does survive, but he's kind of a broken man at it, and like all of those one-liners and that humor kind of gets sucked out of him as the film goes, and more of his commando crew gets knocked off, and so it's like he starts out kind of like the normal Arnold and humorous, and slowly loses that throughout the film. And I mean, like, you also remind me too that it's like one of the challenges of having Arnold in these action films too is like he seems so invincible, he seems unkillable almost, and so having so it's always just a challenge to have an actor that seems so invincible. Like you want to have some tension, and I do feel like Predator is just about as successful as any other film as like making Arnold seem like he is in some degree of danger.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And Unbroken, I mean, he lost his family because it sounds like his commando crew was his family for some reason.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura and Bill Duke, my crew.
Yeah, or Shane Black's pussy jokes.
Yeah. Speaking of stuff that has maybe aged poorly or maybe not, I don't know.
I think Jesse Ventura's character is probably the one that has aged the most poorly.
Probably.
All right. Well, I mean, I think I think we've touched like most things about this film.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps my only other gripe is that Shane Black was probably one of the more normal people, one of the least like manly macho man, and he's the first one to die. Weird. Also, I guess that my other gripe is that Anna by Elpidia Carrillo, she is pretty worthless.
It's kind of I don't know. It's not the most interesting role of the films in here.
Yeah, she kind of adds a little mystical exposition.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah.
Oh, he's the hunter of man. People in my village used to say things. Also, sorry, actually, scratch that. Why did she go onto the chopper? Could you explain that to me?
I guess she was just so afraid of the predator that she was like, "Fuck it, I want to survive."
Okay, but I mean, once she saw that Arnold killed it, couldn't she get off? Because she's gonna go to prison.
Fair point. I don't know. I don't know. Not the greatest character written.
I feel like actually everyone forgot about that part of the plot. I mean, even Arnold. It's like
Yeah. I mean, even Anna apparently forgot about her own plot.
yeah, Anna forgot about it. Arnold, when like the most classic scene when he's like, get to the chopper, like very classic. But why was he telling her that? Why was he helping her? She was an enemy at that point. Like unless they had a plan to help each other, which at that no, Arnold was just sacrificing himself for this person and telling her politely to go to a chopper of her enemy. That was, by the way, 12 miles away from them, which I'm like, I'm sorry, you cannot do that in one day.
Yeah, 12 miles of that train? Jesus, no.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I forgot. I saw that on my notes and I'm like, yeah, what the hell happened with that? Like,
Yeah, right.
what is Anna doing now?
In jail.
In jail? Is she helping the CIA? Huh?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, you just kind of forget about that whole plot line.
All right. Well, sorry, that was my last thing. So yeah, who won?
Ooh. I'll give it to Stan Winston in the Predator suit.
All right. Not the designers of the suit.
No, Stan Winston is the designer.
Oh, duh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to the Thomas brothers, Jim and John Thomas. I want to say that they were the ones who wrote the Predator the way it is.
Yeah, it's such a great concept, and I mean, like, it's easy to see why it's lasted so long.
Exactly. Mr. McTiernan, you've done other great films, so you can
Yeah.
have a loss on this one.
I mean, this film has a lot of people not quite at their peak, but it's like kind of like A- tier work for a lot of people on here. Like Arnold, it's not his best. McTiernan, same thing. It's like it's good. Mm-hmm. It's very good, but it's not quite their absolute pinnacle.
So what do you rate it?
For me, I think a solid 8. It's like a film that I do enjoy quite a bit. It's not quite there for me as far as being like an all-timer, but it's like I can watch this almost as much as some of the all-timers. So, yeah, it's flawed. It has some issues. Anna, I'm glad you brought that up at the end because but it's an enjoyable film.
Yeah, I think objectively I would give it a 6.
Oh, pretty low. Okay.
But after talking to you, I think I'll give it a whole point, so a 7.
I think you'll like this film more when you know what to expect a little bit, because it's so schlocky that it's.
I knew what to. I knew that I was expecting schlock, and I knew I was expecting what it was. I got bored at moments, and that's what I was not expecting.
Okay. I found it to be pretty paced pretty solidly actually this time around. I think I had more issues with that the first couple times I saw it, so maybe it's just because I had seen this just a couple of years ago too, so I had a pretty good idea of what to expect coming in.
Yeah, no, I think the slow moments is probably what killed it for me a little bit, because I mean you have some really highs in the movie, but the slow moments are not as tense as it thinks they are. And again, that's a part where my biggest gripe is this movie just with a different soundtrack probably would have been highly superior.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a good soundtrack, but mostly as an action movie soundtrack.
Yeah. So I mean, just having like action music when nothing is happening, made it killed whatever tension it could have had, and at the same time, there was nothing happening, so it would get me off the movie, and I would get bored.
Okay, well, fair enough.
But yeah, because I mean, the the number of kills here is significantly higher than Alien.
Is it? I don't know. I'd have to count.
I mean, think about the compound.
Oh, yeah, good point. You're right. If you take away the compound, it's probably similar.
If you take away the compound, it's probably similar.
The Predator kill count is similar to the Alien kill count.
Yeah, I guess so.
But the Commandos kick it up a notch.
Yet somehow I think this movie, there were moments I would get more bored than Alien.
Yeah. Well, Alien for me is almost a 10 out of 10. I think that movie is almost perfect. This film, I think, definitely has more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. All right. So yeah.
Souvenir.
The cloaking suit.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the mask, the Predator mask. It's just a cool mask.
It probably smells bad. It's probably like sweaty.
I mean, with that mouth, I mean, do you think his mouth breath stinks?
Yeah.
Probably. But yeah, I'll still take it. You know, I don't have to wear it.
Right on. All right. So that's it. You know, thank you for for going on this journey with us and listening to us talk about a classic 1980s American film that is fun and schlocky in the best ways.
Yeah.
I mean, despite me, you know, saying that it's not the best and all that stuff, I still recommend it. It's still a classic. Nothing's going to take away from it. So, yes, if you liked what we are talking about, if you have any comments, questions, concerns for some reason, or suggestions, please email us at cafilm2film@gmail.com, and that's with the number 2, and the Z is a Z, as some folks across the pond would say. So cafilm2film@gmail.com. You can always tweet at us at cafilm2film, and also we have a YouTube channel, and of course, let's repeat it, cafilm2film. If whatever thing you're listening to allows you to rate us high, and the highest whatever thing that it is, and you know, all that other fun stuff. If there's options like to subscribe, sure, do that too. Anyways, anything else you would like to say, James?
Nope, nothing from me. So yeah, it was fun to rewatch this film. So definitely recommend people give it a shot.
All right, excellent. Well, ciao.